This is pretty wild, and I know that it would overwhelm my dad's expectations of this day. So for that, thank you very much. I wanted to give give an opportunity for Johnny Merritt, one of my dad's best friends of all time, to say some words. He's prepared. So Johnny.
Of course, we've come together today to celebrate Dennis's life. We call Dennis affectionately Uncle Bert. Now, this is an incredibly sad occasion for all of us. Dennis, of course, was stricken with cancer of his bloodstream, and he fought a really tough battle along with his wife of 46 years and his family. And during that time, of course, he was faced with a lot of uncertainty and challenges. This form of illness is particularly tough, and for some of us, it even causes us to question our own faith. I know that I have felt such anger of the unfairness of an illness like this. So the question, of course, is, as in so many issues that we face as human beings, what can we take away from this in order to honor our fallen brother? Dennis, along with Patty and the family, fought the battle, and he did so because he was determined and courageous. And I believe that he believed that he was setting an example for all of us. If ever courage and determination could have been an effective strategy in one's recovery, it was then. Unfortunately, with everything he could muster, it was not to be. Dennis was a smart man, and he was focused. He was a detailed guy. You know, some folks with these attributes, it's the kind of trait that you'd want your brain surgeon to have. As a result, it was no secret that he was very successful in business, and his acumen for his craft paid off on a number of occasions as he was awarded top honors for his proficiency and success in a given business program. Despite his successful career and often serious nature, he could relax with his close friends and family and reveal his playful nature. One summer day in particular will forever be etched in my memory. The Bertwells came over for a day filled with fun and relaxation in the pool and to enjoy a cookout. Now, Dennis was particularly animated that day as he sat on a float in the middle of the pool wearing one of the children's vinyl animal swim rings wrapped around his head like Mayan royalty. He was happy that day and loving life. The sun was warm, the crystal water cool, and we all laughed as he basked in the glory of being the center of attention. Dennis cared about others. He was a spiritual man, and he taught a Sunday school class for many years. I know that there were many that he helped along the way by trying to live the life that he represented to others. He was the straight guy, and he was respected. And of course, that opened the door for all of us to provide the comic relief. One day, Mary and I returned to where we were staying in the mountains to find an upset Dennis, a slightly worried Rusty, and a John III with a goofy grin on his face. Dennis informed us that the boys had misbehaved badly and that they were in trouble. Their crime had been that the two of them had conspired to find their way to the third-floor balcony and simultaneously had peed off the porch. Now, 3 years ago, Dennis and Patty came for a visit to the mountains. They brought us all of these wonderful gifts that they had handpicked from a number of little shops as they worked their way through the various little mountain towns. And then they presented us with a special gift that they were anxious for us to see. It was a hand-painted wooden sign that read, "No peeing off the porch." Uncle Bert and I together fastened it to the wall, and it's there today overlooking our stream as a reminder of our bond and the memorable times that we shared together as a family. The Merritts and the Bertwells grew up together from the time that we had first met in 1980. We went on trips to the mountains and we raised our families together. As our families grew, we decided that the 8 of us were hereinafter to be known as the Bertwells. We made restaurant reservations together under that name. We came up with family games and contests centered on mountain life to add to the fun. And one contest was our yearly fall leaf contest. Honors were given to those that found the most interestingly shaped leaf, the prettiest, the most colorful, the smallest, and the largest leaf. The category of ugliest leaf was subsequently added. This was a natural consequence of regular submittals of rather pitiful gray leaves, half dead with holes and insect damage. This finally opened the door for some others to finally win a category occasionally, to much fanfare and joy. Uncle Bert and I enjoyed motorcycling in old cars. One of our first trips to the western North Carolina mountains involved a motorcycle trip, where we trailered our 2 motorcycles behind the family station wagon. We have photos documenting our trip through the mountains and along the Blue Ridge Parkway of western North Carolina in the autumn. The air was cool, and it smelled of distant campfires and that earthy, mountainy smell. The leaves were full of color, and we were one with nature on that October day, and all was right with the world. This is the good stuff, and having a close friend to share it with made all the difference. Dennis was like a brother, and I could depend on him. We worked on projects together. He was an organizer. I give him credit on more than one occasion for bringing me back to reality from one of my grand schemes in which he simplified my plan. One year I was very disappointed that my drawings for an addition to our home came out over budget. He said, "Look, why don't you just build the dining room, put the deck on that, can the study, and build the pool?" And it was that simple, and we built it in 1986. 8 years later, we built a home with tall ceilings. And that first Christmas, I, through much encouragement from our daughter Michelle, purchased a Christmas tree befitting our new home. Have you ever seen the National Lampoon movie Christmas Vacation with Chevy Chase and Cousin Eddie? It took 4 men to unload that tree from a flatbed trailer. Now, I decided to surprise the family by getting it installed in the great room all by myself. This was a disaster beyond all reason. When I finally had it positioned and cut the netting, it nearly took up a third of the entire width of the room. And it was leaning. And I had tied it off to every doorknob in the room, and I called Dennis. I tried not to sound too shaken, and I asked if he was busy. And he said he was watching a good game and couldn't come until later, until I implored him to give me some help. About 15 minutes later, he arrived, walked in the door, and just stood there transfixed, looking up at the sequoia that occupied the space. He was almost speechless at the spectacle that he was witnessing. And finally he said, "Good God, that's the damnedest thing I've ever seen." Mary came home, took one look, and started crying because her family was due the next day. So we started trimming it down to half of its original size. Michelle came home and started crying because it was no longer the giant tree that we had picked out. Dennis was a voice of reason and of practicality. He was my close friend. We shared many wonderful times together, comparing notes, growing together, figuring out stuff, figuring out life. It was a comfort having a friend that you could confide in. At the same time, we had spats like brothers sometimes do. Newsflash, Dennis wasn't perfect, but I've never wanted a friend that was. We were all blessed to know him. I believe that I had the distinct honor of understanding him, and the world was a better place because he was born. I believe that one part of the age-old question of what are we doing here and what is our purpose in life is actually very simple. It would have to include the experience of love, real love, of family and of friends. A part of Uncle Bert will live within all of us that were lucky to know him, and his love of family and friends will be his legacy. God bless you, Dennis. Today you are the leader. Thank you.
I had the pleasure of working with Dennis, and he and I had a great relationship for a long, long time. Dennis was the consummate salesperson, always looking out for the client, always trying to do the right thing, and always looking for a solution when there was no solution. If I had to describe Dennis, intensity doesn't quite do it. Dedication certainly does, and his ability to stick to a problem, but his intensity was unparalleled. We talk about it still. A few of us just gathered over in the corner, and that was the first word that came out. And it was intensity in a great way. So it was nothing but a compliment. Dennis would be out traveling, I'd be in the office, and we had a thing in our office. A few of us would try to get there before each other, so it wasn't unusual to get there at 5:15, 5:30, 6 o'clock. And we'd all clear our voicemail before we went home, and I'd get in there at 5:30, and my voicemail light was on my phone. And I picked up the phone. I knew who it was. It was Dennis. And he had left me a message at 3 in the morning. It was raining. I could hear the windshield wipers on his car. He was driving to Atlanta and had to fill me in on some incredible update. And they usually were incredible. But that was Dennis. Get up in the middle of the night and make sure you were there for the client. And when I would get his emails, I'd always look at the timestamp, 2 o'clock in the morning, 2:30. Patty and I talked one time. She said, would you put him back in an office? This working out of his house is not working. He's in his office all the time. I saw him more when he had an office. But as you remember those fond stories, he was everything his best friend said he was, and more. Thank you.
Patty and Dennis were often the hosts of a Corvette Club of Texas Drive and Eat, where we drive somewhere and, of course, eat, which I do well. And always, Patty and Dennis went out of their way to do dry runs on their own ahead of time to make sure that the roads were appropriate, that construction was not going to hinder our trip, and to make sure that the place that they chose for us to eat was a great one. So a great thank you to Dennis for his attention to detail for all of us.
He loved to read any books involved about ships or boats. One morning I walked in the hospital and he said, I dreamed I bought a $60,000 boat. And I said, oh my goodness, I'm glad that was just a dream. And we were laughing about it, and that same day we kind of started talking about boats. We decided we would go ahead and buy a boat. That gave him something that he really looked forward to, because he had sold the Corvette, and right then he didn't really have any hobbies or anything he was really looking forward to, but this really got his mind off the cancer and got him excited about something. And one day he said, when I got to the hospital, he said, I've come up with the name for the boat. It's Destiny, because it will be my destiny to beat cancer. And so everybody at the hospitals and all the nurses and doctors all knew the story of of Dennis's destiny. They even brought him a little captain's hat that they signed. So everybody was kind of saluting him and saying goodbye, Captain, as he was rolled out of the hospital. We now have the boat, and the family has ridden out on the boat, but he was not ever able to go on it, but we will always call him Captain. The first thing I want to do is I can't thank Johnny enough for doing those suits today. I mean, that was just perfect, and it just really added to the service. And I know that everybody got to pick a globe, but besides that, I wanted you to have one more special thing because just because what you did, and it was so very special, and we just really appreciate it.
Oh, my God.
You just don't want to start crying.
Thank
It's just a
you.
little something, but we just love you so much. Appreciate everything you do.
Well, that's so nice.
It might go with your globe.
It might.
A can of possum.
You got it back now.
The ultimate.
It is the ultimate gift.
See, Mary, you get it back now.
Oh, she didn't even know? I didn't know.
Oh,
No.
she gave it to us a couple of years ago.
Oh, okay.
Now, I know before Dennis left this world, he said, "You make sure."
Oh, he's laughing now. He is laughing now.
Oh, Uncle Bert.
He said, whatever it takes, you get that back to me.
Thank you, Uncle Bert.
So that was.
Does everyone know the story?
We need to tell everybody the story.
Well, I'll tell you the story for anybody that doesn't know the story. The Bertwells and the Merritts have been friends for so long and we took so many trips to the mountains that I don't know who did it first, but one year, one of us, or two of us, gave the other couple a can of possum. And of course, it is, we never found out if it's really possum in here.
Oh, I ate a can once.
Was it delicious?
On crackers.
On crackers.
It is, I suspect it is some kind of potted meat product. And I'm sure it's delicious. I'm sure this is way out of date. But anyway, yes, we've passed this can of possum around. Oh my gosh, I remember we went to a restaurant one night and Patty and Dennis had made a deal with a waiter to put this possum on a beautiful silver tray with a cover. And they came in and they presented it and he said something about that they had a special that they wanted to give us, and we just couldn't believe it. We was just so amazed, and we opened it up. There was a damn can of possum. And before they left, and this has been, do you all know how many years ago you left Florida? Was it 20 years
About
ago?
20 years
It's
ago.
probably 20
Yeah.
years ago. And we baked them this big cake, and we had a big party for them at the swimming pool in the community where we lived, and we had this in the cake.
We
Yeah.
baked it.
And they knew exactly so that we would get the right piece of it.
Right.
That's right. So this has been passed around for years, and this is great. I accept it with honor, and it will go in a special place.
Until.
And one
That doesn't
day,
mean it's not.
Until it comes
I
back.
think it needs to probably stop now, right?
There are a couple of more generations that could get in on this.
Oh, you know
That's
what?
true.
Yeah.
Absolutely true.
Oh, whatever.
Okay, not at risk of making my family sound really white trash. We also have something we pass around, and they are this pair of clip-on earrings that are the shape of rats. I don't know where they're found in some like weird snort. And they are always, you're tricked into getting them somehow, or someone at Christmas gets them, or something like that. And these little rat earrings.
That shows friendship and family and fun.
And
That's good.
yeah, it's all about mischievously placing them too.
Patty, I thought it was gonna
that's
be
a
something
fun thing.
I
special.
know, I was hoping.
It was special.
It was, but
I mean, it was more than special, but I thought it was like gonna be, I could not believe, you got me,
I
gal,
did,
but
I
guess
did.
what? It will
I
come
think one
back.
time I don't know if it was the day you were going to start the school or something, I had it in your cubby at school. I don't know, we've done a lot of different
Oh,
things.
yes.
Oh, I know what it was. Remember when y'all came to Orlando and you stayed in a motel? Tammy, you were there too, I think. But I made sure I had it waiting for you in the when you checked in, they said, "Oh, Miss Merritt, we have something for you."
Oh,
yeah,
It was a raffle.
I had gone to the place to them and set it up.
Is that when Petrol was born?
Probably, I think so.
I
Yeah.
think it was. I think it
gosh.
was. Oh, my God.
We're so smart.
Well, I'll share it with everybody. It might be good as a
Yeah.
pate.
That's okay.
Possum
I think you'll-
pate on a
You
cracker.
actually eat that stuff unironically.
And now it's 30 years old.
Yes.
When Patty, when you went into labor, and we were keeping Peggy, and Michelle was little, and Uncle Bert called and he says, "We have a baby, we have a baby." I said, because back then, you know, y'all didn't want to know if it was a girl or boy. I said, "It's a girl or boy?" He says, "No, you gotta put Peggy on. I need to tell Peggy first." He wouldn't tell me until he told you that you had a little baby brother.
That's
So-
just perfect, yeah,
Yes,
isn't that
I
perfect?
didn't know that.
And that's it. You didn't know that story?
Yeah.
He
Very
said,
thoughtful.
he said,
I
have
know I
to tell-"
prayed for a little brother all the time because I wanted to name him Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
It was my Star Wars.
Oh my gosh, that's great. Oh, I love
She
it.
used to pray. No, please, I want to be brother.
Did you know that, Rusty?
Yes.
You guys, I know what you guys should be for Halloween.
So, Rusty, you
I
got
honestly think that if my middle name was Skywalker, it'd be pretty awesome. You know, it's like, I've been the coolest guy in the 90s.
Rusty Skywalker.
That would be a cool name, right?
Really would.
Yeah. I would take them to school and they'd be sitting watching TV. I said, "You all know 5 minutes, okay, 5 minutes." Well, they weren't. They were sitting there, and one day I just drove off, and they ran it. They were standing at the front door like this. See? But I came back.
You mean like a couple days later? Oh my God, that's hilarious.
Well, one time Rusty and I were playing this game where we were on the edge of the couch like this and jumping into the center. I don't know why.
Peggy was supposed to be babysitting.
Yeah,
right?
and I
Well,
think
she
she was
was.
like talking to her friend on
She
the
was
phone.
upstairs.
Oh yeah.
And we were jumping onto the couch, and there was these beautiful lamps filled with seashells, glass lamps, you know. And Rusty misses and falls backwards instead, knocks one over, just shatters everywhere. And immediately Peggy's looking over the balcony. "You're in so much trouble. Dad's gonna come home, and you were." And Rusty. Please don't tell Dad.
Yeah.
I guess we'd gone up to the top of Grandfather Mountain and they have a gift shop. And John found a rubber band gun. And it was a wooden gun that had been carved. It had a clothespin. And you pull this giant rubber band back and you close the clothespin on it. And then you can pull the trigger and it'll shoot the rubber band.
No, she's a ping
pong
pong.
ball.
Well, it shot a ping pong ball.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
right.
So he said, "Dad, can I have that?" And I looked at him. I said, "No, because you'll shoot somebody in the eye with it." And he said, "No, I won't. It won't happen. No, I'll be careful." So he worked on me for a while. So we were leaving, and I said, "Okay, you can buy it, but boy, you better not shoot anybody with it." He said, "Great." So I don't remember
5
if it
minutes
was
later.
the same day or not.
It was like when we got home.
Yeah, it was
Like
at the
pretty much
house.
when we walked in the door.
I distinctly remember, now I'm not crazy, I distinctly remember him coming up to me, looking right in my face and going bang, and shot me right in the eye with it.
Well, I was across the table from you. I wasn't
No,
that
have a
close to
different
you.
memory of it.
But
He looked in you in the eye. I think he was like trying to figure it out, and it somehow went sideways into your eye.
I thought I saw him looking at me.
what was worse is that you were cleaning your glasses. So I remember you're cleaning your glasses off, and it hit you right in the eye.
So the frustration then.
Peggy was really the first Bertwell that we met.
Thank you.
We were building a house on the corner, and they lived right across the street from us. And there was a green electrical metal transformer box out in the yard. And she used to come over there and play on that box. And so one day, you know, we introduced ourselves to her, and she was the first Bertwell that we ever met. And she was probably, how old would you have been?
Probably she was Dorothy, the Wizard of Oz. She had her basket and her dog with her, and that's where she would go.
Like
to
a
the transfer.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so
That was her favorite.
we designated that it was our property, but that was her easement on our property. That was actually her designated green box.
Peggy's green box.
Yeah, absolutely. And we said, so do you live alone? You have parents. And she said, yeah, I live right across the street over there. And so we got to meet the Bertwells. And of course, our house was under construction. And of course, we liked them right away. And then we got to know.
They're on human.
That's right. We got to.
Fooled them really well.
We got to know them, and they actually came over and helped us move into the new house when it was finished, and that was 1980.
He said he and another guy, what's his name? There's another guy he mentioned that.
Hermansky?
Yes.
He wasn't
Dave
there today, but he was
Hermansky.
hysterical.
Yeah. So apparently he and Dad were like kind of not sparring buddies,
Yeah,
but
they
they were
were.
at work. They were.
Banter.
Yeah.
Well, and they fed off each other.
Yeah.
And Joel was like, they would get in a room and they would discuss a problem and they would hash it out for hours. He said it would go hours, and we'd like order donuts and more coffee, and they'd figure out a solution over a long period of time, and they would get it down to a T and have it solved. And Joel said, I work differently now because I knew your dad. I learned how to organize some things. I learned a lot about how to be successful. He's retired, of course, but he said we all felt, at first it's like it was really intense. Intensity was the word, but then we all learned a lot from him.
Some of the secretaries and the ladies that worked in the administrative staff, they'd come up and said, "You're Dennis's wife? Are you a saint?" They used to say that. Just because at work he did his job.
I think focus is a good word
Right,
for
it
him.
I think
is.
that's a very
He was
good
there to
word.
do work, he was there.
He was focused. He absolutely.
I really, one thing I've always wondered, and Peggy, I'm sure we thought about this too, is we all would want to know how Frank was. I'd want to learn more about how that man was. So Frank Bertwell was his father, who died when he was a teenager.
No, 40. He was 40.
No, he's
Oh,
not.
you mean your dad was
Yes,
a teenager?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Yeah.
You're on your grandpa or something.
But and we all, I think everybody here has met Valita, who is his mother, and she's very, she's kind of structured as well, but she's not like what we've heard Frank is like. But I'd be very curious as to how he operated, what his mode was, just kind of.
Well, I've heard from Valita. He was very rigid.
Yeah.
Very structured. I mean, he really expected those kids to toe the line, maybe a little bit too much. And I think Dad took a little bit of that with him. You know?
Well, and the biggest factor to that was the fact that when he was early in his college, when his father passed away and his sister, he had to take the father role.
Right.
He had to
And
take
help
care of his
Valita.
mother, put kind of his fun-loving college life on hold.
Yeah.
He didn't get to have that carefree. My parents were off doing their own thing, and I can just party and kind of be, in college, and just kind of had to take care of his family.
Right, and he was a very responsible person by nature. He innately knew that, and that was his calling. He had to do that, of course. Yep, no, he was very responsible.
But then he'd be funny with his face tricks and stuff.
But it's so
Oh,
interesting.
man.
It's so interesting the way, Johnny, when you talked about it today, everybody sees that at surface level, and everyone who's interacted with him, he sees that part. But you mentioned about how when you get down to character and you get to know him outside of that level, it's just there's a goofy person there that just can be totally different.
I
No,
don't
we
care how
have-
sick he was at the hospital.
Uh-huh.
He would tease the nurses all the time.
Well, and the one time, my favorite thing from the hospital, and we don't know if it was like he saw something weird or if he was making a joke.
Yes.
But when he got back, they put him back to the cancer floor from the rehab center, from the neurology center. We didn't know how his mind was working.
It was bad.
But he
He
got
was
back,
hallucinating.
and there was a nurse there who had long, beautiful, flowing hair, kind of
Curly.
wavy hair. And he looked over to Mom when she was helping him in. She's like, "She has a beard. Why is there
No,
a
he
beard?"
said, I've never seen a bearded woman.
I've never seen a bearded woman.
Oh my God. Just like that, lean your face over. Like lean over.
It was like her doing that. And then he
was
thought,
kind of having trouble with his
Is that what I
his
could
brain
wear?
was not quite functioning.
I'm getting waxed on Monday.
But just like the caretaker, one of the caretakers that took care of him, we had a lot of trouble finding somebody that was strong enough to lift him and transfer him, because I couldn't do it, even as small as he was. But this one came, and so she lifted him in the chair, and he said, "Oh, that was good." She said, "Thank you." And he said, "But can I give you some advice?"
That sounds just like
I
him.
know. And she said, "Well, sure." And he says, "Well, next time you might want to wear a shirt that's a little higher up." Because it was low cut. And he says, "Now, I don't mind it, but you know, some people might not
Oh, that's funny.
like it." So he always had good time jokes.
No, he absolutely had this zany side, particularly if he was kidding the children. You know, from time to time, he would kid them. And
About my
it was,
clown shoes, that was his favorite thing for a while.
And my clown socks, and even the last days of his life.
Oh, I remember he told recently he was telling
Yes.
us the story about the clown socks.
I would come in from work, and I'm jumping in the middle of your story, but when I said that, it was a couple weeks, and he barely could even recognize and realize. But as soon as he knew I was from work, he would see that I wear some pretty colorful socks, even with the business outfit. And he's like, talks about clown socks.
Yeah,
He's
he
like,
says, "Wow, I know."
why is he wearing those
I know.
clown socks?
Little details would come to him.
Little
He couldn't
details.
remember the time or day or what happened yesterday, but he knew he could verbatim tell people about our trip to Ireland. Remember he was telling that one nurse about it?
Or he
Or how to navigate to
recall
the
some
very
random
discreet
facts.
location.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just amazing.
What was the clown shoe story? What was that?
That was my big shoes that I used to wear, like middle school, high school. I mean, I still wear.
Were they big, like
Yeah.
chunky?
They were more like moon shoes, like the whole platform, like tennis shoes.
oh yeah, they were about this high off the ground.
And he'd
that's awesome.
see me, as soon as he'd see me, instead of saying hi, he'd just be like, "Clown shoes!"
How about the trout, the fishing? When we went trout fishing?
Oh
We
my
couldn't
God.
wait. Johnny was
Oh,
so
listen.
excited. He said, "I can't wait to have trout sandwiches. I'm gonna get me a big bottle of tartar sauce and some fun. And we're gonna have trout, because they at this trout farm, you catch them and they'll fry it up for you and make sandwiches." He was so excited. Those trout didn't want anything. We would bump their nose.
You were telling me.
Bump, bump. They just,
They're swimming over each other.
You
You
went
just
out there,
reach
they
in and
were
grab one.
swimming over each other. You could see them coming out. There were so many trout in that pond. There were more trout than there was water.
And of course, Uncle Bert had us all like, trained to do the right thing to fish, and nobody was catching a fish.
yeah.
And then I'm the only one
That's
that caught
right.
the
You did.
fish, and I was like, "We're putting it back. I'm not
Yeah.
keeping this fish."
Yeah.
I was
They're
already
gonna
like,
let
I love it.
And
Tag
Uncle
and
Bert was
release.
like, "What?"
Yeah.
We were fishing with little corn niblets, but the fish were so full of corn they couldn't eat another bite.
It
Yeah.
would just bounce off their nose
You know,
and they'd fly.
I was trying to snag one, just randomly snag one.
Errant hook.
And my favorite artificial mountain, conceptual story is when you set up John to actually pan for gold and catch a nice gold watch. Remember that? And we have video of it somewhere, but we were doing this whole panning for gold thing, and this silly guy over here is like,
We kept
set it
thinking,
up
is
to
there
where
really gold? We
he
can
actually
get
has
it.
a watch. Look at this.
I slipped my watch off and put it in the pan.
Well, and one of the things about Dad
Free
is that
snacks at
he
lunch.
always had a comment about how when we would get the little candy drops on the strip, how we get more paper on the candy.
Yeah.
than you
Yeah.
did-
Yeah.
You did more
That's right.
paper than you did candy.
That's right. Yeah.
I like
There
getting
was
the,
little
like
drops of sugar.
getting the candy cigarettes.
Oh yeah.
And Dad would roll them up into my sleeve and put them.
Looked like James Dean.
Yeah.
James Dean.
Dennis and I wanted to do something else, so we decided to separate for about 10 minutes, and then we go look for them. So I went over there to the candle shop. I walked down inside, and I walked in, and I went, "Oh God, it smells great!" And they crack up, and Mary goes, "Patty just farted."
My mother was, I thought, was a great pie maker. She always was great in making cherry and apple pies. Just luscious. And Dennis would say she made it for him, and I would say no, she made it for me. You sure are missing out, Dennis. Feel sorry for you. What? I think I'll have another piece after this one.
I'm gonna have another piece after this one.
That is good pie. And the best part is, it was made just for me. Mmm.
We're a family in pies.
Mine is bigger than yours. It's obvious because she made the pie for me.
Well, the pie may not be bigger, but the mouth is.